featuring the people who make York special.
It's the warmness and it's the humour. The people who make it.
The people who work in the factory are very, very proud of the fact that this is the home of Kit Kat.
And the organisations doing amazing things.
A fair number of women say that Kira has saved their lives, so we know we make a big difference.
From tourism and history to business, charity and the arts.
We are as equally important in the history of this country as London is and as Oxford is.
I love the idea that York becomes the UK's alternative to London.
This is Between These Walls, a podcast for York with Sophie Hudson. Now, we all love York, and we know that it's steeped in historical significance. But did you know that York has a particular accolade that may surprise you? In 2014, York was designated as a UNESCO City of Media Arts. Now, this is huge, and I hope that this episode will start to hammer this home, really, if you haven't heard this before. It means that it's part of a global network of cities that works to put creativity and cultural industries at their heart. There are around, I think, 300 UNESCO creative cities in the world, with 13 of them here in the UK. Now, here's just some examples which aren't so surprising. Liverpool, for example, is a UNESCO City of Music. Bradford's the UNESCO City of Film. Edinburgh is literature. Perth is crafts and folk art. All of those not so surprising. And then York is the UNESCO City of Media Arts. Now, there are a lot of people and groups that are working really hard and have been doing for the last 10 years to ensure that York makes the most of this UNESCO status. And I'm determined to chat to as many of them in the coming months as possible. But we're starting with this episode with Matt Lazenby, who's a past master of the Guild of Media Arts. We're going to find out about that in a few moments. He's also creative director at LazenbyBrown, which is a brand communications agency in the centre of York. And I'll let him do a proper introduction to all that in a few moments. But this episode, we also talked a lot about the creative sector in general. And there's a few really nice bits of advice if you're maybe a young person embarking on a new career. So listen out for that. But I do want to dive straight into this UNESCO status and what it means to York.
We got a small team together of people that could write the bid. That's going back to 2012, 2013. And the bid was written, submitted, and it's an incredible document. It's still available online for people to see. Because a lot of people think, well, why York? What's so special about York? And it's just a quick glance through that document and you're reminded of the incredible things that have happened within the city, wonderful projects like Aesthetica that have been born from York and developed into such incredible world-class BAFTA-nominated projects. So it's a really special thing for York. All over the world, there is other creative cities. York is part of that network, and we have a wonderful link with the projects in those cities and also those cities around the world. So we have an open network and an open dialogue with all those cities. So immediately we're platforming York on a global scale. People say, well, what's media arts? It's not a particularly helpful term, but essentially it's where creativity and technology meet. That's a very simple way of putting it. So within the city, we have incredible sound design, we have incredible projection specialists, we have special effects, we have people pursuing all aspects of entertainment. We've got digital photography, design, brand development, all these different aspects, which are different facets of media arts. Yeah. We thought it would be a wonderful idea to form a guild and to carry on that 700-year-old tradition of having guilds in York, and to kind of subvert that genre and turn it into a guild of media arts. And that exists to this day, so we're always looking for people to support the guild, to join the court, to make sense of the designation, to make it relevant to the people of York, to the institutions of York. Cherie from Aesthetica is currently doing a brilliant job spearheading a movement called Reignite, which is absolutely meant to highlight never mind the artistic merits of this designation. This could transform the city of York in terms of development, like York Central. It could help develop the Riverside development. It could help inform loads of aspects of everyday life in the city, and it's very important. So young people growing up in York should absolutely be aware through their choice of education, through their schools, that they are studying in a City of Media Arts. Yeah. When people come to study, and they might come from Shoreditch and they come to York to study a media arts course, they're doing it in the only UNESCO City of Media Arts in the UK. So it absolutely platforms York as a global player, as a national place where a northern kind of outpost for digital media, for screen-based arts, for the future of theatre, future of television. And we as a city need to make a very clear, eloquent story of that, so that when that young person moves from London to York, as opposed to the other way around, they can tell their parents, of course I'm going to York, because it's the UNESCO City of Media Arts. And that is what every level of York's institutions need to wake up to and need to understand, that actually it's the key to cementing York's future as a global city, as an academic city, as a very particularly sized city. You know, it's a beautiful size. You can walk from one side to the other very quickly. People call it a human-sized city.
I like that.
It's very it's not overwhelming to be in. Many cities are you live in a part of a city. York is somewhere you can live in all of it. You can quite quickly pass through the middle of it and get a real snapshot without having to move through quarters of city. You know, it's a wonderful thing. So that's certainly from my point of view, that gives a little bit of insight into the history. What I feel is the potential, and you know, grateful that of the energy of really a huge band of volunteers. York, if there's something that we've missed, is real constant institutional support of the designation. We're one of the only cities in the world that doesn't have a full-time employed person who gets up in the morning and looks after the designation and elevates it and administers all the huge amount of work involved in keeping the designation. And if we don't wake up to that, we could lose the designation. So that's a real concern.
I was going to say, is this a sort of indefinite thing, or is it something that, you know, after a few years it will disappear? Or I'm assuming it's something that we could lose if we don't use it.
Yes, if we don't behave ourselves. And we don't carry on doing reportable, brilliant things within schools, within the way that we look at cultural tourism, the way that we support our academic institutions. If we don't continue to do the good work, UNESCO could absolutely take it from us. The other side of that is that we can absolutely keep it forever if we cherish it for the kind of gift that it is. And support people in its use. And you know, it's, when you look back, it really has been it's already created a huge amount for the city. And there's a lot of evidence about how it's affecting its growth in the future. But we as a community, creative community, need to work absolutely hand in glove with the council, with the developers within the city, to make sure that story is constantly fed into the really big plans for the future. The next 10 years of York should have UNESCO City Media Arts shot right through it. It's a really important part of our story. It's one of the things that makes us unique. So many cities around the UK are clamouring for attention, for government money. This is the cherry on top of what is already a brilliant city. It's something that defines and encapsulates our story of the old and the new living together comfortably, uncomfortably, in ways which are interesting, which will define the future of certainly screen-based industries. If you look at the Guildhall and the people that work there, the Guildhall's now been developed into a wonderful centre which houses people like Pilot Theatre, XR Stories. It's become a real hub for digital projects, digital companies who are laying the sort of the tracks of the future of digital entertainment for the whole world. And that's a really exciting place, and where better than York to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that this is kind of the thing that I really wanted to unpick with you, was the gravity of this UNESCO status. Because I'm not going to lie, I didn't know a lot about it up until the last few months.
Yeah.
And that makes me assume that there is a lot of people, a lot of residents of York who have no idea that we've got this status.
Yes.
So, I mean, it is, like you said, you've already explained it so well, but let's just kind of really unpick this. It is a global accolade, isn't it? And York is now part of a global network.
Yes.
It's not something that's handed out to every city. It's something that, like you said, individuals have worked really hard, or a group of you have worked really hard to get. We've had it for 10 years, I suppose. And like you say, if we don't use it, we may lose it.
Yes.
What do you think needs to be done? What would be your definitive answer? What needs to be done to make sure that we keep this status for York?
Yeah, I think what needs to happen is that certainly both universities need to better understand and embrace the designation. Every course that qualifies as a media arts course, and that's a lot of courses, games design, digital development, VR, XR, design, you've got filmmaking, there's, the list goes on and on and on. Every person enrolling on that course needs to understand that it's a course offered within a digital a city of media arts. That would be an incredible win. Every person joining those courses should become a member of a student body which is actually part of the UNESCO status, whether that's the guild or a different body. We need to have regular showcases in the city of what media arts is, so the residents are involved. They already are. Colour and Light is a perfect example of a very inclusive way of saying, look, this is what media arts looks like. This is how it makes you feel. So we need to do as much of that as possible. We need media arts build physically hardwiring into our city. I've talked for a long time about the idea of a projector network that would exist, permanently sited, secure projectors across the whole city that would light up alleyways with poetry, that would light up the sides of buildings with work from, could be secondary school students. The ephemeral nature of projection and the non-permanence of it is such an amazing thing to offer young people. We've done projects in Hull where we've gone into deprived areas within Hull, young people who are not in school, and worked with them to create digital art, which is then projected 200 foot onto the side of buildings. And the potential for young people to be involved in that way and to delight residents and visitors and to bring city services alive at night, to connect it to our festivals. So, York's talked about as a city of festivals. Let's get the food festival involved. Let's have recipes going down alleyways, and let's have poetry about how food makes us feel. Let's illuminate the city in interesting and challenging ways. Let's develop, York Central with the media arts in mind. So you've got central areas where people can attend outdoor cinema. They can attend an outdoor film festival. They can walk around using the audio on their phones and have an audio tour around the city. They can use VR goggles. They can use iPads and screens in different ways. So it really is it shouldn't be a drum that the creative sector beats all the time. And it has been for quite a long time now. It needs to be a drum that's adopted by residents and by education and developers. And the institutions of York. So the Railway Museum are now becoming more involved. Their incredible Wonder Lab absolutely overlaps with the designation. So it's a wholesale embracing of the principles that underpin the designation, and it becoming part of York's story as opposed to an add-on that happened while we were alive. It has to outlive us. It has to. And in the history of York, the 10 years we've had the designation is nothing. So that's comforting in a way. But we do need to make sure this is something that becomes part of York's fabric in the future, and that this becomes something that lasts for 100 years as opposed to 10. And it's only really through through those with power, money, influence, they see it for the huge potential that it is. They also look at the evidence of over 50 cities around the world who've used it to dramatic effect to develop new courses, new universities. They've used it as a target for large-scale arts investment. They've looked at how they could develop and turn around badly looked-after areas of their cities. They've used it as a way of developing, 3, 4, 5 city festivals that connect the world in different ways. So, yeah, that's what I would see as the potential for it, and the way it can't be an in-group. There's too much clickiness already in the arts and the creative sector. It needs to feel like a York-centric, very resident-focused project that people don't feel excluded from.
Between These Walls is a podcast just for York. We want to keep it growing and provide more local content that you want to hear. So there are 3 ways you can help. Firstly, I'm on the lookout for local sponsors. If you're from a York business and want to promote on this podcast, drop us an email to btw@soapyproductions.co.uk. That's btw@soapy, SOAPY, productions.co.uk. Secondly, if you know someone who should be featured on Between These Walls, let me know. I'm looking for the people who make York special. That's anyone from an interesting business or with an unusual story, perhaps a charity doing amazing things, or someone working hard under the radar to make York better. Let me know who I need to talk to. Just email btw@soapyproductions.co.uk. And finally, you can help this podcast grow right now by subscribing. Wherever you're listening, just hit the subscribe button, and that helps us out massively. Also, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn if you just search for Between These Walls York. Thank you. Now back to the conversation. I suppose the question that might be on a lot of residents' minds is, for this scenario that you've just described of what your sort of vision of what it could be for York, where would the money come from? Is there funding available to be able to help?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're talking about new money. I think we're talking about where does the current money go? So if you're a developer looking at York Central, you need to animate and enrich that space to make it a desirable place to live. Media Arts can help you do that. So a lot of it is just, the Coney Street development and the Riverside in York and how that's going to change. Media Arts needs to be wired into that. We don't need huge amounts of extra money for that to happen. And then you look at the potential for involvement from like the Arts Council. So I'd love to see a media artist in residence in every York school. I think that would be brilliant. I think media arts careers are amongst the most exciting young people will do. Huge numbers of young people would absolutely love a career in the media arts if only they understood what those careers were. And when you consider that those careers will be virtual reality, there will be games, immersive storytelling, future of theatre, drone piloting, these are jobs that haven't been invented yet. The jobs that they will end up doing haven't been invented yet. And the most of the jobs that haven't been invented yet fall into the media arts sector. So again, it's careers advice. Young people, there's money available for careers advice in schools. We need to make sure those young people are exposed to the careers that exist within the emerging field of media arts. That to me it's not about how do we get huge amounts of money and we'll never be able to do something until we get huge amounts of money. We'd be waiting for a very long time. So York has money available for tourism. So let's look at cultural tourism. Why are people coming? We can't keep on selling the same story of York. We need to look at how can we attract people who were in Copenhagen last year. Why are they coming to York? What's the cultural value of coming to York? So rather than talking about the walls all the time, can we talk about the walls as a surface for projection and things like that? Can we talk about the arts and how they can bring and make people loyal to the city? So for me, it's about enriching the story, developing the funding that already exists, and using as many different funding streams as possible to create a much more compelling story for coming to York, living in York, being educated in York, and for everyone to understand that the City of Media Arts designation isn't just for a select few. it's absolutely going to underpin the future of the city if we embrace it properly.
Yeah, so I suppose it's about reframing attitudes.
Yes.
Around what's already here and making it work with everything that you're talking about.
Yes.
Is it the responsibility then of the Guild to sort of push this forward?
Partially, definitely is. Yeah, of course. The biggest barrier is that the Guild is run entirely voluntarily. It doesn't have. It's always had job share support, a little bit of support here and there. What it really does need, and what York needs, is an arts organisation which is funded annually, which doesn't fear for its funding year on year, but actually looks after the entire breadth of arts provision in terms of how it interacts with schools, right through to university, into jobs, into festivals, into how it expresses and connects with residents. That's a large, ambitious project that at the moment doesn't exist, and that is staffed at the moment by individual festivals, magazines and projects, individual museums, and all the gaps in between those things is where the Guild of Media Arts should flow, is where it's starting to dry up and become a bit arid. We need an organisation that can act as the glue amongst all those brilliant institutions, whether it's the Theatre Royal or it's the Royal Museum, and we need to support them in their efforts to embrace the designation and to develop that story further. Yeah. So at the moment, we do need to focus on that, definitely.
So with the Guild, can anybody become a part of the Guild and sort of help? Maybe they're listening now, maybe they are an artist, not necessarily have to be in business. Can they come along and sort of find out more and be a part of it and try and drive this forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd encourage people to go to the guildofmediaarts.co.uk to find out more about the organisation. There's positions available on the court if people would like to join the management of the Guild and really inform its future. And also go onto the website for a real kind of deep dive into the history of where it came from, what it's there for, and to see where they see themselves helping and supporting, whether that's in developing events, that's spending time in schools. It's a very inclusive group that is keen to hear from people of all walks of life and all career paths. There's lots of openings, and it's also the future of the Guild and the designation is in the hands of everyone in York. There's no group of qualified people who are protecting it. It's incredibly important that people see it as something that they have a role to play in. Going back to when I was a designer working for the Saxonic Festival, a really important thing happened in my career development, my creative development, that I was helping market design the festival because of my music background and just my interest in that area. I was in a very supportive group who allowed me to join the steering group. I thought, this is great. So I was on the steering group representing design and marketing. I was also then encouraged to develop myself as an artist. And to look at the non-commercial aspects of what I do. So as a designer, we are almost entirely commercial in terms of how we think and how we develop projects. There's always a client involved, but we're adjacent to the arts. So I was very generously and very supportively allowed a platform to develop myself as an artist. So I developed Coded Language, which was a multimedia group, and we were looking at sound design, we were looking at poetry. So we worked with Romy Smith, the poet from Leeds, and we created musical pieces that had projection in terms of them as well. And through Coded Language, we developed projects that were on the stage at the Music Research Centre, that were on stage at the Theatre Royal, that allowed us to be considered for the Decibel Festival in Manchester. We also played on the London Eye as part of Damon Albarn's Flight 5065, which was the coffee brand Cafe Direct. That was during the one of the G7 6 summits. So it was, what I'm saying there is that was a doorway for me that allowed me to not worry about the permission of the arts, but as a business owner, someone who was a designer, entirely commercial, was allowed and supported to explore that side of my skills. And I feel as if so many people in the creative sector they're given a kind of suit to wear, and you lack confidence when it comes to like, oh, shall I do a talk over here? Shall I develop my practice over here? We're a bit scared of being rubbish at something, and you do have to be in a supportive environment where you're not afraid to fail. And I think failing in design and having a client throw your work back in your face and all that sort of stuff, very scary situation to be in. So people will naturally be in their comfort zone creatively, and I think it's a tremendous. It's a lovely, playful thing for the designation to allow creative people to expand and develop their practice in different ways, and for someone who might not think of themselves as, oh, I'm in the legal field. How might they express better what they do? Maybe they have a secret desire to express something in them which is creative. How could the designation allow them to do that? How can we support people who want to reskill, who want to change their lives, who want to, take a complete U-turn or whatever? How can we create an environment to reskill and inspire people to explore media arts in that way?
I want to sort of move on to you as a business figure in York and bringing businesses together as well, because it sort of goes along the same theme. And it's very, on this podcast, we're very much about bringing businesses and different communities and all walks of life together for the benefit of York. So you have a long list of sort of credentials. You're Creative Director of LazenbyBrown. You are a Creative Fellow of the Northern School of Arts. I got that right?
That's right.
Creative Fellow of York St John University.
Yes.
You are, this is my favourite title, the Past Master of the Guild of Media Arts.
That's right.
In York. A TED speaker. Your career sounds really interesting.
My background is interesting to me. I find it interesting.
It is interesting, yeah.
Yeah. I was brought up in a very rural village, quite rural, Askham Bryan, just outside of York, and I was someone who wasn't academically gifted. I had deep fascinations with literature, with poetry, artwork, creativity in general. Had a hard time concentrating, often looking out the window. I think every creative person ever says that. And got through a very idyllic primary school in which I was one of only 2 people in my class.
Nice.
Sounds crazy, but
that's similar to
true.
me. I did.
Okay.
I went to a small school. Yeah.
So I'd help out in the kitchens. I'd help out with teaching the other kids. I was really interested in music at the time, in jazz, and learned to play the trumpet at an early age. Louis Armstrong and Miles Davis were massive influences on me, and to their credit, the village school I was in recognised this and got me a brass teacher, and helped me get money for a cornet, and I just fell completely in love with that music to this day, and also the kind of design heritage and the design culture of jazz music, and how music and design overlap is still a fascination to me. So secondary school was idyllic, and I would walk to school across the fields, and it was just the best, absolute best. Love the natural world and spending time in the woods around there, and kind of went from primary school to then careering into Tadcaster Grammar School, which was at that time over 1,000 pupils. I didn't know anyone except my sister, who was there as well. And that was a massive shock to my system, because it was a hard school in terms of the academic rigor. It was sort of pretending to be a private school, even though it wasn't. Looking back, every teacher was such a character, like almost like cartoon characters in my head. The full complement of crazy teachers, good and bad. and there was carved elephant heads in the school stairwells, and it was very Hogwarts. Absolutely. Went through school. I did appallingly in terms of academic life, but made some lovely friends, made some brilliant friends who with me to this day, and spent a lot of time out of school. So I went to school to see my friends, and then once I got home, I started work. So I would sketch, and I would write poems, and I would do murals in my room, and I basically saw it as my free time as a way of bettering myself, as developing my creative practice, and that's what I did. I felt that as my responsibility to grow creatively was entirely on my shoulders, nothing to do with school at all. I feel as if that's really stayed with me. It's our responsibility. It's not. You can't kind of give that responsibility to someone else, and it's never anyone else's fault if it doesn't work out that way. So I started to build a really interesting portfolio of work. My dad, who worked for IBM for many years, kept himself sane and level by building boats, going fishing with me, teaching me about nature and water and all that sort of stuff, how to read a river. I started to become really interested in the idea of design through the boat. I started to design little bits of it, and seeing how that impacted on the boat and its performance and things. So that was, I was probably 11, 12, and that really started me thinking about graph paper and cool pencils and really nice stationery, and just design as a career just seemed like the greatest idea ever, and it still does. It's still something I genuinely get out of bed in the morning and think, this is great. This is a really good life. I really enjoy doing this. So went from that situation, bad academic record, but bulging portfolios of work, and York College very kindly offered me a unconditional place on a course I wasn't qualified for because I could exhibit that I was good. Went through York College and met some incredible people on what was just a general art and design course. There was loads of mature students, a real mix of people, and we learned about the history of art, and we learned about painting and design, and it was a really nice grounding. I had my own little booth that was mine to decorate and inhabit in my own way. That was brilliant. Got involved in DJing and music and really pushed that side of what I do. Really explored that at that age. It was perfect. And throughout my college career, spent a lot of time seeking out bad design wherever I could find it. So constantly going on the bus into York, exploring the York shops, cafes, record shops. And whenever I encountered bad design, I would pull the owner up and say, I can sort that out for 50 quid. I'd be able to do a menu or a signboard or whatever. So I learned the value of what I do as a skill very early. I used that as a way of building my confidence. Secondary school had a massive impact on my confidence. And this was a way that I could sort of build that back up. I could learn the value of design and learn and also take pride in the fact I had that skill. And when I used that skill, it worked, and that was a good feeling. So I developed this second portfolio of work. I had my college work, which was fine. Everyone had that. But then I had this second portfolio of work that someone had paid me to do. And to this day, that's a message I try to take into schools, colleges, universities, is that absolutely do excel at the work you are asked to do. Do that, that's fine. But also be aware that you and all your colleagues and members of your class are all leaving with the same thing. Different takes on it, sure, but if you can absolutely deliver that second portfolio of ideas, that second portfolio of stuff that you've initiated, you've actually got developed yourself, that will see you right in every job interview. That will make you stand out in a way that is always going to cut through. So I do try to promote that idea. So young people who feel failed by the education system, unfortunately that is often creative people, I do try to put the onus on them to explore their own practice, understand the value of it and just how precious it is, and build a career out of it. And I do really feel as if I've done that. And every day now, coming to work, looking at a project, I think, can we do it? Can we not do it? I'll always step into that unknown of, I think we can do this. I'll always err on the side of positivity and confidence. I'll always figure out how we do it along the way. And I do credit my kind of 12, 13-year-old self with that ambition and that sense of like, if it's not me, who's it going to be? Like, if not me, who?
Yeah.
If not now, when?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that got me to my first job, which I got relatively easily. Very, very lucky to have that. At a time when the entire design industry was going through a complete technical revolution of adoption of digital techniques, the very birth of the internet. So I was going into very well-established studios and being a kind of, a bit of a disruptor in those situations. I was bringing technology into those settings that hadn't been there before. I was the person that understood how to turn that on and to make it work and to create things. So that was a very steep learning curve for me and the people who employed me. But it put me in a position of authority really young. So after a few different early jobs, I became creative director at 21. Of at the time was the largest design agency in York, and learned an awful lot really quick about, good and bad management, about how to get loyalty from staff, about how to build a harmonious creative studio, about how to position money over people's happiness, and trying to build a team who felt a real connection and didn't feel pressured, didn't feel, they were free to express themselves, and also got used to the idea of selling to clients. So I always liked the idea that I never liked the idea of a tier of management above designers. So like in a lot of agencies, you've got the designers and then you've got the account managers, and the designers don't get to talk to the clients in case they offend them or, say something stupid. So I always loved the idea of like, I'm the designer, but I'm also the person that meets you. I'm the person that invoices you. I'm the, I love that lack of complexity and the lack of layers. I love being able to sit down with the people I work with, whether it's an owner manager of a small business or it's a creative head or a developmental lead for a big brand. And I love to be able to talk to that person, really understand them, and then be able to create work that reflects what they need. It's a great thing. So that's a whistle-stop tour into my early days into employment.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting to hear your background. And I suppose it'll give a lot of confidence, as you said, to young people who may be more creative than they are academic. Almost, I feel like you're kind of taking the pressure off them, because they don't need to have to follow a certain path into the career that they want. Yeah. It's quite very sort of, you can flow between different things and try different things and get to a point in your career where you go, do you know what? I love doing this. Yeah. Having
young children, I've got a son now who's 17, and seeing the world through his eyes, and as a parent not wanting to make the wrong decision about his education. And, he feels that pressure of like, what am I going to do? I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, and all that sort of stuff. And I do think taking the pressure off is a good way of putting it, because the road through your career doesn't have to be linear. It doesn't have to be like these little gates that you pass through, whether you go to university now or when you're 50, or whether, the genuine truth is you can plan your education, but you might meet someone on a train who completely changes your career prospects. So much of my career and what I've witnessed in business is personal connections. And some of our biggest clients we work with are the result of, someone started a bakery 12 years ago, that bakery closed down, and that person then went to work for this big brand. They remembered what we did for them back then, and it's that connection. Or we gave work experience to a student 10 years ago. That person then gets into a senior role, remembers us. And so the web of connections you build as an individual, I really do think is far more important than your educational route through life. The way you maintain that is like a gardener. You know what I mean? Everyone has this network that you have to feed and water and provide the right environment and look after those people and give them your attention, and if you have a skill that you can deliver that benefits them, it's all quite symbiotic, and it kind of we've certainly experienced that come back to benefit us in the future. So I do try to take the pressure off, particularly when it comes to linear decisions. And I think looking after your network and the people who you rely on, I think is an incredibly important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, I think the message there is just go with the flow. Don't put pressure on yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You said to me before we started recording that LazenbyBrown, your studio, is very York-centric.
Yes.
And so explain what that means to you.
It goes back to my comments on the idea of just looking after a network of people, I suppose. I'm not a believer in New Year's resolutions particularly, but one thing I always do on early January is sit down with a massive piece of paper and review the year before, the work I've done. So I'll put myself in the middle and then look at the projects that I did in the previous year, then look at who those projects came from and look at how those projects are interrelated, and look at where does the work flow from, and you start to realize very quickly how interconnected everything is, and where you need to put your attention and emphasis in the year ahead to develop an environment where more work comes from those sources, or you create new leads and all the rest of it. So I find that a really kind of rewarding thing to do. I always find it very interesting. So doing that in a local environment allows us to be York-centric. So whether it's a project we're doing for the Rowan Museum, or it's for York Gin, or it's for the Ghost Merchants, we feel that we play a very active role in the creative work of all these big businesses and small businesses, which really make up the fabric of York. So we're very interested in how things look and how they feel as a resident, but also as a visitor. We were responsible for creating York City signs as you drive into City of York. We've been involved in the narrative project for the city, as well as new branding for the University of York, and how that is then spread out across its different faculties and schools. We've been involved as well, slightly further afield, but in Selby. So rebranding Selby, Sherburn, Tadcaster as the heart of Yorkshire, and all the projects that have now flowed from that. We've just rebranded Selby Abbey. So we closer to home, York Minster, breweries like Rudgate, and working with Lincolnshire as well. So Lincolnshire, Selby, York, we absolutely love the fact that we can see our work everywhere we go. That's a great feeling. It's nice to be supporting some of the rising stars of York's retail. Retail's having an awful time right now. Walk down Coney Street and it's a bit sad. It's a shame what's happening. But you go down the Shambles and the queues that exist outside the Ghost Merchants are absolutely booking a completely national trend. And what we have in the Ghost Merchants is one of the greatest examples of experiential retail that the UK's seen. You can't overstate what it takes to get someone to queue for 3-4 hours in the rain. Yeah. That person may have arrived in the country, come straight to York, come straight to the Ghost Merchants, and stood in that queue for 3 or 4 hours. That is an incredible pull, a sense of urgency that person needs to get one of those York Ghosts. And the way that working with Angus and David, who are the founders, working with them to develop that story, to manage the growth of the business, to help them with the online sales, to help them with the stories, and it's been a real kind of blessing to do that. But as well, brands like Cooper King, amazing gin company, one of the most greenest distilleries in the UK, working with Abby and Chris on the early branding and defining what that is. It just feels great to be part of these big stories for York, and to see those. We've also done a new brand for Lincolnshire Coast, so nearly 40 miles of coastline from that takes its Skegness and Mablethorpe and all those areas. It just feels great to be part of the county and to see your work around. It's lovely to see and to experience that variety. York has some incredible businesses, and to feel that we have a active role in promoting what they do, in helping them develop, whether it's a coffee shop. We work with CNS Sourdough, we work with Brew and Brownie. These are really important, brilliant examples, best in class when it comes to like coffee, sourdough, amazing cakes, and so it feels great to be working with those people, to be working with the makers, and also to be working with people, the educational institutions as well. The variety is what keeps us interested.
Yeah, and it must be really rewarding and quite exciting when you get to work on brands like the success story of Ghost Merchants. I mean, that's been a huge success story.
Yes.
People from all over the world stand in that queue.
Yes.
And I know some residents may laugh at that, but no,
yes.
I think it's a really great story. It's a really nice little piece of the jigsaw of York.
Yes.
And I suppose it's quite nice to hear that you have never really sort of positioned the business as being, we're just going to work with big brands, big successful brands and big organisations.
Yeah.
You've never done that, and you've continued to help smaller businesses, the one-man bands, the retail across York.
Yes.
I think that's a really nice thing to hear.
Yeah, we don't see there's a tension there. Some people find it odd that we don't specialise in pharmaceutical businesses or fintech businesses or whatever, and we wouldn't sacrifice that variety. And we also see that creative people have a set of values, a set of skills, and they can be applied to almost anything. Whether you're a small bakery or you're an emerging bank. We, through our process, the brand personality process that we've developed over the past 6 years, we feel as if we have tools, reflective tools, to allow people to understand what their business is, whether that business lives inside them. So it can be very difficult for an owner manager who's just setting up, they've got their brand together, they've got their website together, and then they start to employ someone, 2 or 3 people, and then they think, why isn't that person doing it like me? I have to do everything myself. That frustration, we've helped a lot of small businesses release themselves from the pressure of being their own brand, and we've helped them lift that out, and through the workshops we run, turn it into something that everyone can access and everyone can see, building brands which are based on all that good stuff that's within them, but freeing them from it. We see that as exactly the same principle as working with a big IT firm who are across the UK, but have lost sight of who they are, lost sight of their difference, lost sight of their personality, lost sight of the bravery that used to exist in the brand. So we like to reconnect people with who the hell they are and build a brand out of that. So that's I'll never get tired of that. It's a lot of fun. It's a real privilege.
I bet. Absolutely. Well, listen, Matt, it's been really great to chat to you. I'm so glad and pleased that we've started to unpick on the podcast a bit more about the UNESCO designation and the importance of it. And I think you've done that in a really good way.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing more projects that you're working on in the future.
Thank you.
I definitely look forward to finding out more about the Guild, and I'm sure people listening will as well. And hopefully maybe getting involved in future as well. So thank you very much.
Very welcome. Thank you.